Hello, everybody. We've made it. It's Independence Day, July 4th, a Friday in the United States. Quite an achievement for 2025. When I think of Independence Day, I often think of the great song on the album The River by Bruce Springsteen, Independence Day, which was a rather sad song about loss. But Independence Day for most people is actually a cause of celebration. And C-SPAN, that was a Freudian error, C-SPAN, not CNET, C-SPAN, are running a series which is beginning in the next few days on America 250, celebrating American independence and, of course, the upcoming 250-year anniversary of American independence on July the 4th, 2026. The producer of that show is my guest today, Paul Orgel, talking to us from the C-SPAN offices. Paul, will you forgive me for confusing you with CNET? You're not CNET, you're C-SPAN.
We are very much C-SPAN for several decades now, and proud to be here.
So just remind us, Paul, what exactly C-SPAN is, because not everybody quite understands. It's probably the closest thing that the US has to the BBC. Is that fair?
We are funded through cable subscription, cable TV subscriptions. So we are not an arm of the federal government. We take no money from the government. We don't do ads on television. We are right now almost completely funded by people here in the country and their cable bills, several cents from their cable.
So in other words, you're nothing like the BBC. You're a privately subsidized.
Exactly. But what we do is, and we've done this for more than 4 decades now, is we cover Washington, the workings of Washington. What is the Congress doing? The president, the court, public policy discussions, speeches by leaders, that type of thing. And it's long form programming. It's not sliced and diced like you might get on some.
Yeah, long form is a euphemism for sometimes what some people consider boring, although C-SPAN changed the political history of America. I know that Newt Gingrich used to watch it a lot, and perhaps Gingrich's career and the populist politics of America have changed over the last 25 years, maybe through C-SPAN. Certainly it's an influential network, isn't it?
It is. We try to be where the action is, and I think we are really proud of what separates us, Andrew, from the others in that long form, live setting. We will take you to an entire hearing so that you can decide for yourself who you think is right, who you think is wrong, and without commentary. I mean, we will hear comments from viewers doing viewer phone calls, commentary from pundits from time to time, but when we're airing our events, we are not getting in the way with commentary. We just want folks to be able to make their own decisions about what's going on, who to vote for, that kind of thing. And if we stick true to that, which we've done for more than 4 decades, we're going to be around for a good while longer. Our audience.
You're certainly going to be around, I know, Paul, for a good while longer on C-SPAN. You're the producer of this 250 celebration. And it's going to run for several more months, for more than a year. And we're going to have you on the show, on my show, Keen on America, a lot. Tell me a little bit about yourself before we get to America 250.
Sure.
You're obviously a proud American. You're based in the Washington, D.C. area. Were you born in this country?
I was. I'm a native of New York City. Grew up partially in the upper part of Manhattan, sort of near the tip, and then the rest of those early years in northern New Jersey with my family, my parents, and 3 siblings. So I'm a New Jersey, New York metro guy. Went to school out in Pennsylvania, the University of Scranton, for my undergrad. And then I went over to Northwestern University and studied at the journalism school there, and then started a career, Andrew, that took me to many corners of the country. Local news, Buffalo, New York, Central Florida, Pennsylvania, mid-Missouri. And then this great little producing job came open at C-SPAN 30 years ago, I'll say. And I took it, and that's been the history ever since. I've done just about every kind of job there is to do here at C-SPAN, on air, off air, managing, organizing, producing. And I live just just outside DC, and that's my story. That's my basic story.
Where does your family? Where can we trace your family back from?
My family would come largely from Poland and partially from Scandinavia. So both sides can be traced to Poland, what is now Ukraine as well, the eastern part of Ukraine, and mom's family, half of mom's family is from Sweden, Lithuania.
So quite recent. When did the Orgels come over to the U.S.?
Oh gosh, between 1910 and 1915.
And in terms of your thoughts about America and your thoughts of yourself as an American, do you think of America primarily in terms of contrasting the Republic with other places around the world as an immigrant society? What distinguishes in your mind? We're going to get to America 250 in a second, but what for you personally, Paul Orgel, what's the difference between America and other countries around the world?
Oh gosh, what a big question. And we don't get political here at C-SPAN with what we say, but I just interviewed a bunch of people in Boston and Philadelphia about what it means to be an American. And the word that kept coming up was freedom. Freedom to live where you want, do what you want. I think a lot of people might argue that these days, that freedoms are becoming more limited here. But that was the word that kept coming up. And that's one word that rang true to me. But I've been to many other countries, and so many of them have such wonderful cultures and systems, things that I think are admirable as well. But that word freedom just keeps jumping out at me, and that's what I preach to my own child and other people I come across.
I take your point about C-SPAN not being political, and it's certainly much less political than a lot of the networks. But is it possible, Paul, really to talk about America, particularly in 2025, without being political? Isn't it inevitable one way or the other? As soon as you open your mouth about what America is or isn't, you're being political.
It can be really difficult. The employees at C-SPAN are long trained to keep their opinions to themselves, especially when they are on the air, when they are writing, even in the office, even what they post on social media. So I actually don't find it very hard. When I leave the office, of course, I have opinions on things, and I share them with people that I trust, that don't necessarily agree with my opinion. I love to hear a diversity of thought, both on our air and when I'm outside the office as well. I don't find it particularly hard, but we try to check each other whenever we can. Our buddy system, our checking system, when it comes to how we write a graphic or how we write a script, how we describe something, really works. We really challenge each other to stay down that center line that makes us unique, makes us who we are.
As I said, you're the producer for American 250 and exploring the American story, which of course in many ways is focused on the foundation of the country. On your website, you even include the signers of the Declaration of Independence. If we were able to, Paul, bring some of these characters back, if they were able to see America in 2025, do you think they would be surprised and perhaps troubled by the fact that we're not supposed to be political on air?
Oh gosh. When you read about how the early debates and early politics in this country were conducted, very rabid, very opinionated, very harsh in their political campaigns. We take that to heart. We know what's happening now in this country. It's an interesting question. I don't think the founders would be surprised at how divided politics are in the country now. In terms of media, we still need to play play it straight. And I know the media back then, from other series that I've done, was very harsh, very opinionated, very critical of candidates and the debate going on. So you raise an interesting question.
You will be raising many interesting questions in your series, Paul, America 250. Tell me a little bit about this. It's going to run for what, a year or 18 months, beginning in the next few days?
Yeah, it's actually going to be an 18-month corporate-wide project. It's absolutely huge. What I mean by that is dozens and dozens of people here at C-SPAN are going to be involved in this project. We are really just getting started. My job will be to deal with content, identify programming, create programming, figure out where that programming is going to air, and manage, all the processes within. But it's 18-month project, corporate-wide. We want to help tell the story of how America became America, right? And to do it in our own C-SPAN way. I'm going to talk about the years since the founding of the country up to present day, and challenge people to talk about who we are today and where this country might be headed. Lots of different aspects to this. C-SPAN, what it does best is event coverage. So I'm looking at another TV screen right now of all the events we've covered so far, and we're going to start rolling them out this weekend. So this July 4th weekend, we will have already seen the president formally kick off 250 from the White House standpoint, having a big celebration at the White House. But on July 4th, C-SPAN is going to have 24 hours of programming related to the Declaration of Independence, the start of the country. I can give you some of the details about the 4th itself. We're going to have a live broadcast from Philadelphia, the Museum of the American Revolution. We're going to talk with the head of that museum about the revolution, about the importance of it in our country's history. And we're going to take a neat look at some historic Revolutionary War flags that they brought together from private collectors. But we're going to be at the National Archives July 4th for the annual reading of the Declaration of Independence. We're going to be up in Boston for the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Bunker Hill, the big commemoration.
So this is all today, Peter.
Say again?
This is all today.
This is all July 4th, yes. We're going to replay the Army's 250th birthday parade that happened back in June, you might remember. And we'll also see what the president's doing on July 4th. I know that he is hosting fireworks on Independence Day.
He always seems to be hosting fireworks, whether they're real or not.
Yeah.
What are you trying to do? America isn't always distinguished in terms of its education system by its deep historical knowledge. Are you trying to remind Americans, particularly young Americans, of its history?
Yes, I think when I look at our audience, I think of older people who may love to be reminded of the events, the players, the themes, but also the younger audience, which we try to reach quite a bit through some of our programs like C-SPAN Classroom or Student Cam, which I could talk about. But yes, the goal is to remind, but it's also to inspire people to think, to ask questions, and as I mentioned earlier, try to figure out who we are now and where we're going as a country. There aren't a lot of people on television doing history, lots and lots of history, but we've had our history channel, American History TV, for well over a decade now, and hours and hours of programming on the weekend, all kinds of historical pieces, and this fits right into that.
I know that a lot of your work is optimistic, reassuring, may not be boastful, but it certainly celebrates the American story. Some people might be watching this and thinking, well, that's all very well, but what about slavery? What about indigenous Americans who, even at the original time of independence, were being slaughtered, sometimes at a mass level? How do you address that? I take your point on not wanting to be political, but is it possible to even begin to tell the American story, Paul, without being political, without addressing slavery and the history, often the tragic, bloody history of indigenous Americans?
It's not, and I think this effort of ours will not just be celebratory, but will be realistic to the good, the bad, and the ugly of our country's history. I mean, that's what our callers will be calling about over the next year, year and a half. So we're already doing much of that through our regular history programming, whether it is covering topics like slavery or treatment of the indigenous people. At C-SPAN, we're not getting directly involved in the debate. Again, we're event coverage, so we might show a professor who is talking about the role of the Cherokees in the American Revolution, or the view on slavery by slaves and by combatants in the Revolutionary War. We will allow a professor, an historian, an author to tell that story, but in no way are we going to shy away from those themes. Not at all.
But those, what you call those themes, are so political now. There's huge debate. Again, you don't need me to tell you this, in states like Texas and Florida, about what even kids can and can't read. So it's hard to escape the politics of this, isn't it?
It's going to be hard to escape the politics of it. But again, we are different in that people respect us not for giving our own opinions on things, but for putting out the opinions of others. Again, I mentioned the authors, the historians will take viewer phone calls, and they will be all over the place in terms of opinions. So certainly we're not stepping out of it, but we're actually letting people do it. These authors, these guests, these viewer calls, and we will moderate all of these discussions in a way that works for C-SPAN, which again does not directly get politically involved. That's what we do best, and we're always watching out for balance of thought. So as I look at my list of events that we're starting to gather, I do need to make sure that we are as balanced as we can possibly be on a lot of these issues.
Paul, as America celebrates its 249th anniversary today, what's your take on the state of the nation? Again, it's not a political question. I don't want to talk about Trump too much. Has talked about him, but a lot of people have noted an increasing degree of pessimism. I mentioned the Springsteen Independence Day song from 2014, a very pessimistic song about the state of America, deindustrialization. Do you think that on July the 4th, 2025, America is particularly pessimistic, or is there just a general kind of zeitgeist of pessimism around the world these days?
I think it depends who you talk to, and I don't mean to escape the question by that answer, but I personally know people of all stripes, and I do know a lot of pessimistic people. I know a ton of optimistic people. It just depends on their own story, their own situation, how vehement they might be in their own politics and expressing themselves, what matters to them most in life right now. Of course, we read about the pessimism, not just here, but elsewhere in the world. But I wouldn't be doing myself a service if I didn't read broadly and not just have one outlook on the country. I see both, and they talk about this country still being an experiment, right? How can we get better? How can we become more unified as a country? I don't think that conversation ever ends. It's just that kind of country that we live in, and that's a challenge to all of us. So, without sounding political, that's my own vision of what I see out there. And of course, you see this. The country has a lot of successes, but it has a lot of problems. Personally, I'd love to see the country solve problems. I prefer we solve them together, and not necessarily with one party doing all the work. But again, I'll stop there and let you carry on.
As I said, you're focusing on the foundation of this country, America 250. You noted earlier that America has been an experiment in bringing the country together. But is that how the founders thought about America? Was it a project for bringing Americans together? Did they think of the community here in a collective sense? I know a lot of people have argued that the foundations of the Republic were actually many different communities that weren't well connected. This was obviously pre-industrial agricultural America. And there was no great desire on the part either of the founders, or certainly the people living in the country, to have that much to do with the people, not just in the big cities, not that there were big cities then, but even in the adjoining villages.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think when I read about the period when the Constitution comes along, a decade or more after the Declaration of Independence, the beauty, I always think of this, and I'm always reminded of this in my reading, is that they left that Constitution amendable. I think they realized that they weren't going to have all the answers to everything. And since then, we've had, a couple of dozen amendments to the Constitution to be able to change things, to address new situations as they come along. So, yes, these states, these colonies, before they became states, before we became a country, many of them had completely different takes on things. But that's sort of the beauty of it all coming together as the United States. States still have a lot of disagreements on things, but I keep going back to that Constitution and how important that is, and how important the fact that it can be changed if necessary. That's such deep wisdom that they had 200 plus years ago, I think.
Do you have a favorite founder, someone who to you captures
what a great
promise?
What a great question. I've always been a big fan of Ben Franklin.
I thought we've done shows on Franklin, actually.
The span of life that he lived to be an old man, and he spanned generations. He was so influential without having to have been elected to office. He was so influential, both in his contributions to the revolution, the drafting of the Declaration, but even outside of all that, starting the post office, all of his inventions, the way everyone looked up to him for wisdom and knowledge. In fact, I was just in Boston. We were doing a tour of the Freedom Trail, and this particular stop was not on the Freedom Trail, but it was the birthplace of Benjamin Franklin. And I asked the tour guide, do you do a tour just on Ben Franklin? He said, no, we don't. We think it's a little too narrow for people all over the world coming in. I said, if you did one, I'd go on that tour. I would easily go on that tour. He'd actually be my favorite.
Yeah, we did a show. I don't know if you know Mark Skousen, who actually is a distant relative of Benjamin Franklin. We did a show recently. Skousen is a prominent libertarian who has a new book out on why Benjamin Franklin is the greatest of all Americans. Finally, I know you got to run, Paul. What are you going to do today? How does Paul Orgel celebrate Independence Day, and how should other Americans do it? I mean, I hope you're not going to eat too much barbecue.
We have been so immersed in July 4th programming, getting everything organized and getting things started. I will do some work tomorrow, actually. But once I break away, for me, it's quiet time with family. Sure, we will do a cookout. I will take care of a couple of my senior dogs and spend time with my wife, since she and I have both been traveling for our careers so much lately, and just spend a quiet day with family and friends, possibly go out to see some fireworks in the evening. But that's TBD. That's yet to be determined.
And you're not going to have a minute or two quiet reflection on what it means to be American on July 4th, 2025?
Yeah, I make it a point on all of these holidays to think about the holiday itself and what it means, and not just treat it as a day off, but to really reflect on what it means. And I keep going back to that word freedom that I mentioned, the word experiment that I mentioned, and doing my part to help make this place as good as it can be, whether I'm at work, outside of work, interactions with other people. Hear that pessimism that's out there, but hear that excitement that's out there, and continue to figure out who I am as a person and as a professional.
Well, your series that you are the producer of, America 250, will run for the next 18 months. We're going to do lots of shows with you as America gears up for its 250th year anniversary. Congratulations, Paul, on the show.
Thank you.
Enjoy July 4th. And do your reflection, and we will talk again in the not too distant future. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
and I'll throw in the fact that starting July 5th, every Saturday on American History TV, C-SPAN 2, you're going to start seeing our programming. Reenactments, interviews, panel discussions, lots of different programming starting July 5th, C-SPAN 2, running for the next 18 months.
No,